welcome to Book Chat number 9. My name is Ita and I'm a librarian at Tamworth Library and Central Northern Regional Library. And today we're joined by 4 fabulous guests. So we have Kimberly, Susan, Peter, and Tanya. So usually we introduce ourselves. So you already know me, Sue and Peter are regulars. Tanya has been before and she's a fabulous author. So we'll talk about her in a minute. But Kimberly is a first timer. So Kimberly, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and why you read.
So I'm a technology officer at Tamworth Library and I also work at Werris Creek Library. And I read for fun, I would say, and I pretty much always have. When I was younger, when I was being punished, instead of being sent to my room, I'd get sent outside because my room wasn't really a punishment because that's where all my books are. So I was happy to go there. So yes, so it's just always been fun for me.
Yes, we had discussed this before and a lot of us read for that same reason, for fun, entertainment, but also education, escapism. For me at the moment, it's a lot of escapism just with COVID and not being able to travel. So yeah, it's interesting, all these different reasons why people read. For me, it's also community, because you can talk about books and learn about other people. So I don't know if you guys saw Tanya's announcement this morning on Facebook, Tamworth Library's Facebook. She announced a one book, one region. Thank you very much, Tanya, for doing that. So I'll just announce it one more time. It's going to be the Thursday Murder Club. Yay! So when Tanya joined us last February, she was talking about that. And since then, I've read it. Amanda has read it. We put it forward as one of the 4 books. And the committee chose that. So that's what we're going with. So Amanda is, at the moment, hopefully it's not raining too hard in Tamworth. She's giving out all the books to the cafes and stuff. So everybody in the region can join us. So
no dismembered bodies this week.
No.
Well, that's a pity.
That's a pity, isn't it?
Oh, that's a real shame.
Although in the Thursday Murder Club, there's some, bodies and stuff. So, so let's start with Tanya today. So what we usually talk about is what we've been reading lately, where you found out about it, and who you'd recommend it to. So Tanya, do you want to take it away?
Oh, thank you, Ita. And also hello to Sue and Peter, because I'm sure you were on the last book club that I was involved in.
We're always here. We're the tarts of book club.
Excellent. Every book club needs one, let's be honest.
Well, you got 2.
Or 2.
And we love you so
lovely. So lovely to see you both again, and hello, Kimberly, and hello to all the Tamworth Library readers. I'm just such a fan of your library. I absolutely love it, and Ita and Amanda do the most amazing work. So thank you for letting me be part of this. I've got quite a list. I'm incredibly frustrated because the latest book that I've read, I actually can't remember the title of, and I forgot to look it up before I came on, so we might have to do between us a bit of Googling. But the last round of books have been quite an eclectic mix. I don't think I'd read this when I spoke to you last, but The Girl with the Louding Voice.
No.
By Abby Dare. And it's an extraordinary book written from the perspective of a young girl in Africa. And basically, their lives are worthless. A young girl's life means nothing. And her father sells her off to this hideous old man in the village who already has a number of wives, but he's the richest man. And this girl's father is struggling and he can't keep all his children because the mother's died. And so the girl is sent off at age 13, 12 or 13, to be his, I think, 4th or 5th wife. And I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to get through this book, but the writing is just fabulous. And this girl is feisty, and it appears, it's not her real name, but appears to be largely based on her life, the life of Abby Dare. And it's a very, very common story, she says, of you know, young girls across Africa, right across Africa, in little villages where there's no education and enormous poverty, and girls are traded. Anyhow, she's as feisty can be, and she has a terrible time but escapes, and then ends up in the city, and it's almost as bad in different ways, but she keeps on fighting, and she is determined. She is going to become a teacher, and she's going to learn how to teach so that she can go back to her village and teach her community and the children in her community how to read and write, and how to start becoming informed, and so to change things. And that's the dream that keeps her going through very, very dark times. And she's this child, and what she's put through and the abuse she's put through is unbelievable. And she calls on her enormously loved dead mother for support throughout. Because the last thing her mother said to her father was, "Do not do anything to prejudice my daughter's right to go to school." And of course, father reneges because they're starving and daughter is sold off. So The Girl with the Loud Voice, it's a very easy read because she writes in this delightful way, and it is fabulous. Then to a completely different style.
Can I just interrupt? When you said louding, is it louding, loud, ing?
Louding, yes, Louding.
Okay, all right. And
it's representative of her very funny English, because she tries to learn English, and it's, you know, it's just this combination of every kind of word she can throw together, all out of context and no grammar and so forth. So that's one of her special words. Jumping again to a totally different story is Eleanor Hogan, who's a local Alice Springs writer.
Oh, I think we've lost Tanya. So hopefully she'll come back, because she's a little bit... Peter, what are you doing?
And she's just... You may have heard Bates and Ernestine Hill. So you know it?
We just lost you for a little bit, Tanya.
Oh, sorry. How much did I get?
You were just starting to talk about your local writer, Eleanor somebody, but we didn't get the title of her book.
Okay. Eleanor Hogan, and the title of her book is Into the Wilderness. Into the Loneliness, not wilderness, loneliness. And it's an extraordinary recounting of the extraordinary lives of two extraordinary women, Daisy Bates, who was this unbelievable woman who in the 20s and 30s, dressed in her Victorian garb, went out and lived with Aboriginal communities on the Nullarbor Plain. And then Ernestine Hill, a journalist, again, a woman ahead of her time, who found her and started writing her stories. And it's the interweaving of the stories of these two women who had the most extraordinary insights by going where women never, ever went. Daisy Bates was, she'd probably be locked up if she was around today, because she, did the most shameless and outrageous things, but she was a character of her time. So it's had a lot of publicity and Australia-wide, and it's a very interesting look at our history and how two women just completely defied the odds and went out and did these, extraordinary things. Philip Adams interviewed her on Nightlife, and that's a very interesting interview if you have the chance to look it up. The next one, am I taking up too much time?
No,
Nita?
Go for it.
The next one you probably all have read, and called Shuggie Bain.
No, I could not.
I tried but gave up. It just was too much.
So distressing.
Yeah.
And I struggled, and I kept trying to give it up, but we were doing it for our book club and thought, oh, I'll have to plough on. The writing is exquisite.
Yeah.
Absolutely exquisite. But what a story.
Mm.
What a story of it's just the 80s. You know, this was Glasgow in the 80s. He could have been writing about, you know, back in the 70s or 60s, but no, this is the 80s, and it's a very stark look at what happened to Thatcher's, all the consequences of Thatcher's policies and shutting down the mines and the poverty that then flowed through Glasgow. So, yeah, I struggled through that, but it was brilliant.
Mm.
The next book is Rick Morton's most recent book called My Year of Living Vulnerably.
Oh, I started that. I started listening to it. Yeah.
So Rick Morton, some of you may have read his first book, 100 Years of Dirt, which was my absolute pick for 2019. Last year, my pick was The Thursday Murder Club, which I just adored. And the year before was Rick Morton's 100 Years of Dirt, where he talks about growing up in outback Queensland, very draconian circumstances and father, and how his life descends into poverty. But he's an extraordinary bloke and a brilliant writer, and he pulls himself out of it and becomes one of Australia's leading journalists, and is today, but has suffered immense traumatic, post-traumatic sort of consequences, I think, of his early life, which included seeing his brother nearly die, being burnt alive on the station, being left on the station with his father, who was hideous and had an affair with the governess, and he was left there as this little boy and never quite recovered, and then went off with his mother and sister, and their life was one of immense poverty. So that was, he's such an easy writer to read, and I loved 100 Years of Dirt. His second book, My Year of Living Vulnerably, is very clever. It's sort of an extension. He explores the issues he touches on in 100 Years of Dirt, and he delves down into them. But again, I find his writing really interesting. He gives case studies and stories about himself, but also they're all in almost essay form, and looking at, okay, well, if you have all these issues, how do you nonetheless make sense of your life and make something beautiful of your life?
Mm.
And again, I love his writing, and it's very brave. It's a very brave book for anyone to write, but especially a gay man in their 30s who's never really had a relationship because of his trauma, and is nonetheless prepared to come out and say all this and talk about the work he's done and work generally around PTSD. But it's not a difficult read, and I loved him. The one I'm about to start is 100 Days by Alice Pung. Pung. Has anyone yet read?
I haven't read that one yet. I have read others of hers, but not this one yet. So yeah, that'll be good. Yeah. We'll touch on what we're reading in a minute. We'll just do what we have read. So those books that you read, Tanya, that's you say they were easy to read, but I find them, most of the ones you read had hard topics. So yes. Who would you recommend that to?
Well, that is interesting. They are almost hard topics, which is why I really wish I could remember, and I'll look it up during this. The last one I read, which I adored, which was another murder mystery, absurd escapism. Well, I think for anyone really interested in human rights issues and the development of Africa, The Girl with the Louding Voice is very informative, very instrumental in giving an overview of what life is like there. but from a little girl's perspective, a teenage girl's perspective. Shuggie Bain, well, I'm not sure I could recommend that to anyone unless they really had, they were prepared to go into those really hard times. But the writing is exquisite. Rick Morton, I would recommend, because I find, even though his topics are difficult, he writes in a really easy fashion. I find him easy to read. So anyone who's interested in those kinds of issues of how do you make sense of life when you've had lots of struggles, he has lots of science that backs up his case studies. But again, he writes in this, he's a journalist, so he writes in a way that's easy to read, little, pint-sized bits of information. So I'd recommend that to anyone who is just interested in those kinds of issues. Eleanor Hogan, I'd recommend to anyone who's interested in Australian history, because it's so much about the laws of Australia and the difference between the states and the territories during that time, what it was like for women during that time, how few rights they had. And then you had these two absolute kick-butt girls who just went out there and, they did all sorts of outrageous things, but they were free spirits. And anyone who's interested in Australian history and interested in looking at perhaps the perspective of a very Victorian-style white woman out in Aboriginal communities, and there was a lot of it is, she just would not be accepted today. But for what she did back then, I think for anyone interested in people who exhibit courage and bravery, both those women do that. And I have to say, yes, most of those books have been, they haven't actually been the easiest reads, but the last one, which I will find, is was written by, now you'll know this, Ita, the Finding Alibrandi.
Oh yeah.
Is it Melina?
Yeah. Is it Melinda or Melina? Melina. Yeah. You would know, Kimberly. Like
Melina Marchetta.
Yes.
Yes.
That's her.
That's it. and her book is something like Find the Truth, Shame the Devil, something like that. Right. It's actually set in England, and it's a thriller.
Right, that's something different.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic read, and you're just hooked, and you're turning every page. And I read it almost straight through, a bit like I did with
the Thursday Murder Club.
Yeah. So I'd recommend those books that I've read are all books that make you think and are very interesting. But if you want some complete escapism, yes, the last one, I think, Find the Truth, Shame the Devil is just a ripper read.
Cool. Thank you, Tanya. So after those hard books of yours, we might go to Kimberly, who reads for fun. So maybe she can tell us some fun books. Take it away, Kimberly.
Okay, so one I've read recently is Circe by Madeline Miller. She's an American writer, and it's basically based on Circe from Greek mythology. So I'm not hugely familiar with a lot of Greek mythology, but she apparently was a character that was a little bit of a villain in the Odyssey and in other stories of Greek mythology. And this book is more of a feminist reframing of her story and kind of gives her kind of more of a voice, and she's not just, a side character in other people's stories. And yeah, it's quite poetic writing. I really enjoyed the writing because I'd seen it recommended by a few writers that I follow on Twitter. So that's why I thought I'd check it out. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. So it brings in other characters from Greek mythology as well. But yeah, the main focus is Circe and her story and, her motivations for different things that she may have done. But yeah, it was a really great book, and yeah, I'd recommend it to anybody who either loves Greek mythology or is new to it as well, like I was.
Sounds good. When you said Circe, I thought, Game of Thrones.
No. That maybe
It's cool.
what he's named after, possibly.
Yeah. Anything else you've read lately that you could recommend?
So the one I'm reading at the moment, I'll just grab it here. It's called Love in Colour by Bolu Babalola. And it is similar themes. It's a collection of short stories, but it's all reimagined folk tales from around the world. So from West Africa, Greek mythology, and ancient legends from the Middle East. And yeah, similar themes actually, but it gives the women that traditionally maybe were more victims in the story, it gives them more of a kind of a voice and centers them in their own stories. So yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. It's really good. It's really well written, and yeah. So that was another one that I found on Twitter as well, because I follow the author and I really enjoyed her Twitter feed. So I thought I'd grab that book and check it out. And it's really good.
That's a different way of getting your recommendations by Twitter. I do get them through, Facebook and Instagram, but I haven't done Twitter before, so I might have to start following authors there. Yeah. Peter, what have you been reading? You'll just have to put your microphone back on. Do you want to share? Yeah.
Yeah, I've used Zoom before. I do have to apologise. My office is has a lot of glare coming in, and I'm very white, so it upsets the white balance of the camera, and it makes my face go red, and I flare. So
you look
sorry
good.
about that. What have I been reading? Well, we weren't on last month, so there's a stack. I'll go as quickly as I can. Oh no, I'll go quicker than that. The first one was Chasing the Coven by Sandy. I think it's Saunish, or Saunich, a first-time author. It's a book based in Melbourne. It's kind of a redemption story, really. It's a really strange book. The first 170 pages seem to plod along, setting up. And then the last 100 pages, the narrative just absolutely explodes, and you have this fantastic story. And it's about basically an old guy who's a rubbish collector. No, what do you call them? Go around and collect things from secondhand stores, do them up, sell them, pick up stuff off the street when we have the bulk collections and stuff. And his wife has died, so he's by himself. So just by circumstance, he ends up with this young bloke who's kind of adrift, bad family background, not at all interested when he joins up with him. And he starts helping him by mapping out where they've got to go for the day. And then the story moves on. They become very good friends. And essentially, as the old guy weakens and gets ill, further and further ill, this young bloke takes over more and more. So that in the end, it redeems him and he gets on with his life. The old man dies and he settles his affairs, etc. Really good read, really nicely written too, but just got to get past that, the first half of the book that's quite slow. I think as a first-time author, she'd probably look back on it and say, well, I could have chopped 50 pages out of that and done no harm at the start, but that was okay. A series of essays called Black Summer, which was put out by the ABC, and basically they got a lot of their journalists that took part in the 2019-20 bushfires. Remember when they were a thing? And they've written a whole lot of essays about people they met, circumstances, in some cases their own circumstances. Richard Glover, for instance, had a mud house that they built in the bush, and neighbours saved it for him, so he writes about that. That's a good read. And because they're all journos, so it's well written. A pretty ordinary book, but a mate gave me a book called The Poetry of Cricket. It's got a whole lot of just poems about cricket, obviously, but it has a lot of very famous poets in it, which lifts it up and fills in the gaps for the ones that aren't so good, because there's some pretty ordinary poetry in there, but some of the better poets make a good fist of it. Everywhere I Look by Helen Garner. Crap.
Oh, really?
He only says it because Sue loves you.
Will not be convinced otherwise. I've read Helen Garner's work and I really normally enjoy it, but I just found this whole series of short stories and I just couldn't engage with it at all. I didn't like the writing. I didn't like the content. It was rubbish. There you go.
Very brave.
No, honest. There's a difference.
Yes.
Brave was coming on this morning. When We Become Strangers by Maggie Hamilton, which is a book that looks at loneliness, kind of a self-help book, I suppose, or a self-repair. And it's really nice. It's based on a lot of really good sociology. And very helpful. And very helpful. You don't have to be lonely to read it. I mean, it's a good exploration of essentially what she's looking at is the more we have become a connected society, the more we have become a disconnected society. So our ease of connection with each other has become the very thing that disconnects us because of social media and the way social media gets abused. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with social media, but it becomes an outlaw and a device by which anyone can say anything with no accountability, essentially. The next one was, which I did enjoy, by Margaret Simons, called Penny Wong, Passion Principle.
Oh.
Always been an admirer of Penny Wong, not so much after reading the book. She's very much the political animal, much more than I'd realised. I mean, they all are. Not distracting, but there have been a number of occasions where her principles that she wears very proudly on her chest lapels have been bent to make sure she got elected or to make sure the party line got towed. I was quite surprised at that, especially over things like the environment. But obviously, look, a wonderful woman, a strong, passionate woman, and there's no question about that. And we're better off having her in Parliament than not, and better than most of the parliamentarians we have down there. At least she has some principles. Frankly, I think most of the people that we have in Parliament, both major sides of the House, they think principals were the person who was in charge of their school. Lastly, The Kindness Revolution by Hugh Mackay.
I've just picked that up. Must have seen it on your thing.
Yeah, good read. Typical Hugh Mackay, based on thousands of interviews. Other than one chapter which talks about institutions, which I didn't quite get. I couldn't quite get the point he was trying to make, but the rest of it was very, very good. And just talking about how if we take a little bit more time in what we do, rather than feel that we have to go with the rush, again, social media and other things, that we have to check on the news 4 or 5 times a day or more to see what's happening with COVID, that we have to, he's sort of saying, just, it hurts no one, including yourself, to just slow things down a little bit and take a little bit of time to do those random acts of kindness. He doesn't believe in altruism, which I found interesting, so that he doesn't believe that doing an act of kindness is good for you. He says that if that's what you're getting from it, you're being selfish. Not sure I agree with that, but that's his point of view. But it's a good way to build people up, to build our society and to build in relationships and all sorts of things. So a good read, very easy read. He's an eminently easy guy to read, and the stuff just rolls along. Loves quotes, so that suits me because I love quotes. Lots of really good applicable quotes to what he's saying. And yeah, it's a very easy, very quick read. But yeah, as usual with his stuff, it's pretty much on the money. That's it.
Cool. Thank you, Peter. I actually have that here. I just
want me to recommend anything? Or have I done that already?
You basically, yeah.
Okay, good.
Who would like to
I'll
read
mute again.
So, okay, you can keep it on. But yeah, 2 of the books Peter was talking about, The Kindness Revolution, I've picked up because I saw it on his Facebook and I thought, I need to read that. And the other one by Margaret about When We're Lonely or something like that. Yeah, I've got that at home as well. So I've got quite a few to read. Sue, what have you been reading?
Okay, I've read quite a bit, but I'm just going to focus on 2 books that I'll highly recommend. So the first one, these are actually 2 that I brought with vouchers that lovely people have gave me. So I normally borrow from the library, but it's so nice to go ahead and buy a book occasionally.
I always borrow from the library because my wife won't let me buy books.
You need vouchers off lovely friends.
Well, I don't have any lovely friends, so there you go.
Oh.
I
I'll be
guess
your
you can
friend,
work out.
Peter.
I guess you can work out why.
Okay, so Second Place is the name of a book, a new book by Rachel Cusk, and I would give it 5 out of 5. So that doesn't happen very often from me. So she's got up to about, I think I've got about 4 books on 5 out of 5. Okay, Rachel Cusk is an English-British author. I came about it. It was recommended by Annabelle Crabb, and also Helen Garner is a big fan of Rachel Cusk. So there. So that picked up my interest, and I brought it. And also I have a friend over Fremantle who also recommended it. So I think you'll like this one, and I loved it. So the main character is called M. Don't know what M stands for, M, which is quite interesting because she might actually read, I've gone blank. Who did I just mention? Annabelle Crabb and
Helen Garner.
So Helen Garner does that. She uses a letter and not the full name. So I don't know if they're reading each other, but that was a bit of an interesting thing. So the main character is M, and she went to an art exhibition, and she was so moved by the artist's works that she felt like he was speaking to her soul. And she and her second husband lived on a property in, I don't know, some Cornwall maybe, or somewhere like that. And they have this second place, a second house that no one lives in, and they offer it to writers and artists to come and use it for a retreat. Anyhow, she contacted the artist that she fell in love with, his work, and invited him to come and do just that, which after a while he accepted. And she felt that by having time with him, that she may be able to unravel all her midlife crisis thinking, and that she just was in such a state of angst that talking to a genius, artistic genius, might help her understand herself and her thinking a bit more. So he was this visitor, and she has a daughter who comes and goes as well. And this visitor brings a girlfriend. He's older and brings a young girlfriend along. So in the past, all these visitors have been of no consequence to her. They've just come and gone. Not so much with this one. I will say no more because I'll just give away too much. Do not read any plot analysis of this book or read reviews of this book before you read it, because it'll just spoil it all for you. This is a book you have to go on to like a journey. You don't want to know anything because it just spoils it. So just start at the very beginning, put aside life and enjoy it and get to the end. And then there's another little bit written afterwards that gives a bit of a backstory about how this book came about. And I'm not going to spoil it by telling you that, because I didn't know that. And then when I read, I went, oh, that's cool. I'm glad I know that, but I'm glad I didn't know it beforehand because it would have spoilt it. So just go with this one. It's really great. So I think this would suit anyone who likes their books to come at them a little bit different, to be a bit challenging, who likes good writing. She's certainly a good writer. She normally writes semi-autobiographical stuff like Helen Garner. I remembered her name this time. But this one's not that at all. This is actually got characters and a plot, and it's different, very different to what she's written in the past. So she would be considered a feminist writer, but I wouldn't say this is in that genre at all. It's different, and a surprise that she wrote it, but I really loved it. So 5 out of 5 for Second Place by Rachel Cusk. The other one I bought and read, which is, again, a new publication just come out, is Still Life by Sarah Winman. Has anyone heard of this one yet?
No.
I've heard, I have heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
She wrote When God Was a Rabbit.
Doesn't ring a bell.
I'll give this one 4.5 out of 5. I would give it 5, except for there was a lot of Italian words in it, and it really interrupted my reading flow, which annoyed me. I can cope with French if it's in there. I can slide over French, can't slide over Italian words. So that just made it a bit more difficult for me to read at times when it was happening in Tuscany. So the main character is a guy called Ulysses Temper, Private Ulysses Temper, and it begins in the hills of Tuscany in the Second World War. And he stops to give a lift to a woman who's just on the side of the road looking around and just, a bit lost. And she's a 64-year-old art evaluator and restorer, and she's employed to come and find a painting to make an assessment of. And she was just kind of standing on the side of the road looking at the stars, really. And he offered her a lift because he thought he could connect her with someone that would help her find her artwork. So that happened, and that's a chance meeting that's important later on in the story. So you need to hang on to that bit. Also, around the next day after he took her back and whatever, he had another chance meeting, which happened on a roof. And again, it's a very important incident in the book, and I'll say no more about that. He acted a good Samaritan deed, and then later on, that's an important part of his life. It comes back into his life. So after the war, he returns home to East London and to work in a pub. Returns home to a wife that wants to dump him because she had a fling with an American soldier and now has a daughter with the American soldier, by the American soldier. And he's promised to come back and get them. So she's awaiting that and doesn't want to be married to Ulysses Temper anymore. So he just hangs around doing the bar work, and you get to know all the significant characters in his life there that he comes back to. And they stick with him throughout the book. No matter what he does or where he goes, these characters stick like glue, and they're all very interesting, all shapes and sizes. So yeah, and then a document arrives in the mail, and that will change his life and change where he ends up living and changes everything and changes other people's lives that are around him. That's all I'm going to say about that. So 4.5 out of 5 from me on second place by Still Life by Sarah Winman. Loved it, loved it, loved it.
That's
Awesome.
great, Sue. You haven't given us any spoilers, just the basic plot line and all the important points to watch out for.
Yes, but I haven't given away the main part of the book. You still will love this book. I've just tried to make it as enticing as possible without giving too much away.
One more comment. The reason you couldn't stand the Italian is you can't do an Italian accent.
No, I can't. I can do great accents. In French, I can speak English with a French accent. I can speak English with a Scottish accent, an Irish accent, but I can't do English with a Italian accent. So I found it really hard. But I sound like all these other countrymen who speak English with an accent when I go to their countries.
Well, I'm intrigued. I'm hugely intrigued by both of those, Sue. You are a great storyteller, in terms of giving us an overview and the little hooks. I'm hooked for both of them. Well done, you.
Thank you very much. I like to hook people in.
Well, you hooked me in too, Sue, because both of them are now on my to read list, even though I still have 2 to read from Peter's list that I already have at home.
And I'm pretty sure they were both published either this year or late last year. So they're hot off the press.
Yeah, nice new ones. So what I've been reading is complete and utter escapism, because I just needed to escape from COVID and work problems and whatever. So I picked up an audiobook that was actually recommended to me by Kimberly, and it's called 6 of Crows by Lee Bardugo. I'll just show you. I'll see if I can get it out.
Yes, I've heard of that, Ita.
So I hadn't heard of it. I can only get it on small. I don't know if you can see that. But I listened to it's 6 of Crows by Lee Bardugo. It's a fantasy one, so Sue is out, but I really, really enjoyed it. It is, for me, it reminded me of Amsterdam in the maybe 1900s, that city. It's called Rotterdam, so maybe that's why it reminded me of it. But there's strong characters, there's action galore. I couldn't put it down. Well, actually, I couldn't stop listening because I was listening to this one. It had a really great cast of characters in the book, but it also had a really good cast of narrators in the audio book. I was surprised by all the different people. It was like listening to a theatre show, really. Like, it wasn't just one person putting on different voices. It was actually different people, and it was really lovely. I just couldn't put it down. And then when I finished it, I thought, oh, I want to know more. And the second one is called, so it's 2 in the series, Crooked Kingdom by Lee Bardugo. And unfortunately, it was lost at the library because whoever had it never brought it back. And I couldn't wait, so I bought it. And then I thought, oh, I'll just buy it, read it, and donate it to the library. But I was so engrossed in it, and I had a glass of port while I was reading it. And then I knocked over my glass of port on the book, and my husband said, no, you have to pay the library now, because he knows I normally never buy books. And I go, oh, actually, this is my book. But yeah, now I can't donate it. But it's a great book, so you should really, really read it. And I didn't realize that her previous books or later books, she has another series, are actually just now a series on Netflix, and it's called Shadow and Bone. And we find at the library a lot of people want to read them now. So I might read them next, just to keep going, escaping from COVID and wherever I am now. I have actually read one serious book. I talked about it last week that I was reading it. It's called The Henna Artist. And it is beautiful. It is like one of Tanya's books with strong women. It's set in India in late 1800s, 1850, something like that. When you read it, you just can see the colors and smell the food and see all these people. Even though I've never been in India, I felt like I was there. And just this strong woman who goes against the grain and is not, staying married to whoever she had to be married to. And it was so fantastic to read that, and again, it was a form of escapism because I wasn't stuck in Australia. I was in India with this completely different culture. So I would recommend it to anyone that's interested in strong women, in history, in different cultures. Because for me, it was an eye-opener. I've never been in India, and it was completely different for me. The other books that I read, the fantasy ones, I would recommend it to anyone that just wants to read something fun, a page turner, lots of action. I don't watch a lot of telly, so for me, that's my, Netflix series, basically. It was just so fun and well written. And for me, it was fun because I can't do English with an English accent. Mine is with a Dutch accent because I am actually Dutch. But in the books, there's a lot of Dutch words. So, but the author, I think, is from Israel. So I don't know how that happened, but definitely recommend it. It's just fun. So let's see what we are actually reading at the moment. So Kimberly, you've already told us what you're reading. Are you reading anything else?
I just got to go and get mine. Hang on.
You're cool.
I'm listening to one of Kerry Greenwood's Karina Chapman books. I don't know whether it's the 5th or 6th one. It's called Cooking the Books. So it's I like that series because it's kind of a mystery series, but it's not murdery. Like, it's more, missing people and missing objects, and still mysteries to solve, but not, gruesome murders. And so she is catering on a film set in this story, and it made me think, I wonder if she wrote that from experience from making the Phryne Fisher series, because I think she was maybe a producer on that. So just made me think, I wonder if she kind of knows these, actory type people, and she knows how, from experience, it's all kind of come to her that way. But yeah, I'm really about halfway through, I think, but I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, good. So why did you pick that one up?
It's just something light, just to listen to just before bed, and you can kind of easily pick it up again the next night if you don't have to go back and remember who all the characters are. It's all very clear, and yeah, just some light fun.
Cool. Sounds great. So Tanya, you were shaking or, nodding your head when Kimberly mentioned her. So you're a fan of Greenwood?
I'm a huge fan, enormous fan. I've read every single one of the Franny Fisher books and every single one of the Corinna books. I just love her style. She's funny. She's she creates extraordinarily gorgeous scenes. In Franny Fisher, it's all about the beautiful clothes they're wearing, and in both of them, she's obsessed by food.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah. Franny Fisher, she has this gorgeous Chinese lover who wears these gorgeous sort of silken outfits, and they're just filled with fun, and the good guys always win. And it's like, what's not to love about Kerry Greenwood's books? And she's written so many of them. She's just prolific. I was such a fan of hers. I sent her a message once, and she actually replied, and she said she doesn't think about them. They just pour out. She doesn't plan them. She just sits down, tunes in, and out they come. And she has to stop every now and then because her cat, because she loves cats, puts a paw on the keyboards and reminds her to stop and do her wrist exercises to keep her wrists okay for typing. And I just like, oh God, I want to be Kerry Greenwood. She is my idol pin-up writer. Yeah.
How cool. So what are you reading at the moment, Tanya?
Well, this is really shameful, but no, it's not shameful. It's just I've done my bit of reading the hard books. I do have to read 100 Days by Alice Pung, but there's 2 thrillers that I want to read. The first is the latest Cormoran Strike and Robin book by, what's his name, Gordon Braithwaite. Anyhow, J.K. Rowling's Alter Ego. It came out, I think, late last year, and I've read all of the Cormoran Strike books so far, and I love them. So I've ordered it in because the library doesn't have it, sadly. So
what?
Yes, I know. Well, I think somebody had it and took it. That seems to be the problem, and hasn't returned it. And the other one,
so it doesn't surprise me. Someone's probably taken a long time to read it.
Yeah, well, they're all about that thick. It's ridiculous. Yes. And then the other one I'm dying to read, but it's not quite out yet. It comes out in September, but I'll be first on the list, is Daniel Silva's next book. And Daniel Silva is an Israeli writer, and he has this just fantastic character who basically... has anyone read any of Daniel Silva's books?
No, but they're popular in the library. Yeah, very popular.
They're thrillers, but they're very realistic. He's a top Mossad crack, I suppose, spy, and all the books are based on what really could be life events, world events. He weaves in world themes, but it's just always it's a cracker of a read. It's page turning, and so they're going to be my treats, my escapist treats next.
Lovely. That's so nice to do. Sue, you went to get your book, so do you want to show us?
Yeah. So I'm at night. I've been reading classics. So I've read almost finished. I think I've got one more read to finish this book. So it's Christina Stead's The Man Who Loved Children. Probably the reason why I'm reading it is I actually have a friend who's related to Christina Stead, way back, like her father was a cousin of Christina Stead. And the first time I read it, I went, what the hell? This book, these characters. And then she said, well, it's semi-autobiographical. That was the family. I went, you're kidding me. Like, there was a father like that and a mother like that? Oh, my gosh. And so I decided to read it again because I was so aghast at the book. And I still feel like, oh, my gosh. So when I finish it with it, I will shout my friend a cup of coffee and we will talk about this book, and she can walk me through Christina Stead's life and how the hell did she manage to survive her parents? The book is written as if it's the family lived in Washington and then, mainly Washington, America, but it's based on her life in Australia. And it sat on the back burner, and then for some reason when it was republished, it became quite popular in Australia. So has anyone else read it, The Man Who Loved Children?
No.
No, it's
going to go onto my to-read list again. Thanks, Sue.
So an Australian author, back in, I'd say the 20s, the book is written in the 20s. So Christina Stead grew up in Watson's Bay area. The house is there, and there's a plaque outside her house with her name on it, etc., etc. So I'm quite fascinated by the author and this loose connection I have through my friend. But the story, blows my mind. You just feel like screaming at these people. Look, can you just be good parents for one day? You're just hopeless. You're horrible. And yet their kids still love them so much. And they're just fruitcakes, honestly. And I wasn't raised by them. So that's it. I've nearly finished that. So I will then take on at night. This is not probably a classic, but I'm finding it a bit of a slow read. So that'll be fine for a slow burner. So that'll be fine for nighttime until it takes off, which I've been told it will take off. Just hasn't quite given me yet.
I love that one, but it's a slow read.
So when it takes off, that'll go into my daytime reading, but at the moment it's a slow burn nighttime read. And then during the day, I picked up this. I went into the library. I thought,
I saw that.
I need a book. And had two poor librarians trying to understand what I might want to read and trying to help me. I drive librarians insane. And
no,
then
you don't.
I walked over to
everybody.
the staff.
It's everybody you drive insane, not just librarians.
I went over to the staff picks, and this was Megan's.
Yeah.
Is it Megan or Megan?
Megan.
This is Megan's recommendation, and Meg and I both love Helen Garner, and we have similar tastes. So I thought if Megan likes it, I'll probably like it, and I just love the title.
Yes, I saw it. I was so tempted with it, but I had so much to read, so I left it on her shelf. Yeah, you have to let us know what you think. The title is
Let's Explore Diabetes with Owls. I mean,
I know.
Huh? That's as weird. That's about the weirdest title I think I've ever picked up.
Yeah.
And it's not fiction. It's a bit like Helen Garner. It's just short observational chapters, and he writes really well. I think this was published in 2013. I think he was probably in his 30s. He's a gay journalist. I think he's a journalist. And it's not his first book, so it's good. It's good. But at the moment, I've got a cold, so I'm really not feeling like reading anything. But when I feel a bit better, I'll be back into it.
Cool. So we're nearly out of time. So Peter, what are you reading?
I'll be surprised. Sue's just been talking. Conversations at home are usually fairly one-sided.
Liar.
I'm reading that one, Power Over Panic by Bronwyn Fox, recommended by Gary McDonald. It's for those of us that have problems with anxiety disorders. This one by Steve Bidoff, it's his new one called Fully Human. Bidoff, of course, famous for The Secrets of Happy Children years ago, and manhood, stories of manhood, raising boys, raising girls. This is to do with understanding. He describes the human mind as having four stories. First story is gaining all the information, is constantly aware, senses picking up things. The second story is emotions. The third story is the cognitive analysing, and the fourth story is essentially putting it all together and being able to access any story. So not interesting to anyone who wants to read the narrative, but that's how it is. And this one, which you won't be able to read the cover of, still herring away through this. This is by T.E. Lawrence, as in Lawrence of Arabia, called The Seven Pillars of Wisdom. The interesting thing about this book, and can you see the edge there of the, This was a proof copy that came out before the book was actually published. There's only 29 of these published in the world. And I've attested that by going on the internet, and that will show you the errors that are on certain pages and the fact that the edges low. But there's only 29 of those in the world. So At the moment, I'm reading a $7,500 book. So there you go. It's fairly dry, but it is interesting because the guy was a raving bipolar and did some amazing things, but more amazing in his own mind, I think, than anybody else's.
Cool. Thank you, Peter. I have actually put Fully Human on reserve like last week. So it's amazing that we read so many of the same books.
It's a good self-repair book. I don't believe in self-help. I think self-repair, but it's not written in a way that a lot of those books you read and think, I could never do that. I'm never going to be able to do that. And you feel worse after reading it. But he's quite good. It's also very good conversations with Sarah Konofsky, where he was interviewed about this book, which is worth listening to. If you don't want to read the book, just put aside 50 minutes for that.
Who was that again, Peter?
Steve Bidoff.
Oh, Steve. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Interviewed by Sarah Konofsky on Conversations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. So I have 2 minutes left. So very quickly, I wasn't reading anything at the moment because I just finished something, but I went to work yesterday and Tanya's publisher had just left something for me. So Beyond Alice, which I already read 2 months ago and loved, but seeing Tanya is going to be one of our authors again. So I'm doing a question and answer session in 2 weeks on the Saturday, 31st. So I'm rereading this to get, the good questions. So if you want to join us, come and join us via Zoom on the 31st. You can get your free tickets through our Facebook site or our website. So I'm really looking forward to digging in again because I loved it the first time because in the beginning I was just going, oh, poor little Tanya, I just felt so sorry for you. And then the funniest bit I thought was when you were conducting the choir and you're wiggling. That was just so funny, but I won't go into that. People will just have to read it. So that's what I'm looking forward to. So we're nearly out of time. So I just want to tell you that the next meeting will be on Thursday, the 12th of August at 11 a.m. So please join us again if you can, and we'll talk about more about books. All these books we have just discussed now, I will write up with the help of Peter and Sue, and we'll go on our book chat blog, which is on bookchat.medium.com. And once the boys have put this up as a podcast, it will go on to Apple and Google Podcasts. So we'll see you there. So I want to say a big thank you to Kimberly, to Sue, to Peter, and to Tanya for enjoying me today. And we'll see you all next month. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ita. Kimberly, Sue, Peter. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.